chairman of Creator Syndicate and co-founder of Creators Publishing, which has published 4 of Franco's best-selling books as ebooks and paperbacks, and Winning Bodybuilding as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Let's bring up Mr. Rick Newcombe.
Thank you very much. I am very grateful to have the opportunity to stand before Franco's friends and loved ones to say thank you, Franco. This man changed my life. We first met nearly 40 years ago when I was a junior executive at the Los Angeles Times, and I was a bodybuilder. I'd always wanted to be a bodybuilder, not full-time, but I just loved lifting weights and I wanted to stick with it. But over the years, I would get distracted. So I decided, why not get some professional advice? So I went over to see Franco in his office in Westwood, and he said, okay, take off your shirt. So I took off my shirt, and he studied me from the front, the side, the back. Okay, put your shirt on. Then he started making notes and writing out a program. And he had some dietary suggestions. And he said, now I want you to come back in 6 weeks. But there's one thing I want you to remember, and I haven't forgotten this in 40 years. He said, when you do an exercise, concentrate on the muscle. Forget the other people in the gym. They all have opinions. Forget it. They have their opinion. Just do what I tell you to do. Well, that gave me structure. I felt this is terrific. So I followed Franco's advice to the letter. 6 weeks later, I went back to see him. He said, okay, take off your shirt. I took it off. And this was what was like a thunderbolt. He got all bug-eyed and said, unbelievable. I cannot believe it. I never saw such improvement. This is incredible. And to this day, I remember this. Talk about a master motivator. I mean, and he said, look, this is progress. Let's make a really serious program. So we went from 1 hour a day to 2 hours a day, 4 days a week to 6 days a week. No, and I was all in. This is what I wanted. And then every month I'd go back for progress reports. I had lunch with Arnold at the Los Angeles Times. He said that was the smartest thing you could have done to hire Franco. And we worked together. At the end of the year, he said, I'm doing a book for businessmen. Would you be willing to pose for it and to tell your story? We could do exercises together at World Gym. I said, sure. Now to be willing, I'd be honored. So we did that. We stayed in touch over the years. 2 years ago, our company in Hermosa Beach, Creators Publishing, republished some of his best-selling books from the 70s, but the one, Winning Bodybuilding, published in 1977, had sold 500,000 copies. And we published it as an ebook, paperback, but we want to do that as an audiobook. So Franco came down with his publicist, Lynn Swanson, for a few days, and I was with my son, Jack Newcombe, who's the president of Creators Publishing, and we had an audio engineer. We sat in the recording studio, and as Franco started reading the book, I made an executive decision. I said, Franco, wait. It's not so easy to understand, and it's not flowing, and we've lost your enthusiasm. Let's just go through the book. I'll have a copy. We'll go through every paragraph, but you tell us what you were thinking. I'll ask you questions. Tell us what you had in mind. And it's like conversations about winning bodybuilding, even though we cover everything that's in the book. And it was incredible. I mean, I learned so much. Like, you get a real feel for why Arnold and Franco were such good training partners. He tells the story that when they were sharing an apartment in Santa Monica, he said Arnold was always the one first up in the morning. He'd say, come on, Franco, let's get up, let's go to the gym. And Franco said, oh, I am so tired. And he said Arnold would pick up the bed and start shaking it. And so then Franco said, all right, so I threw a couple eggs in the blender, and we saw how he ate his eggs. And he said, then they get to the gym, and he said, after about an hour, I'd say, okay, Arnold, let's throw another 45 on each side. So it was like one got him started and the other increased the intensity. There was something so charismatic about Franco. When I was at the Times, there's a family in Los Angeles called the Chandler family, and for those of you who know about Southern California, they were they were the founders of Los Angeles in many ways. And we have the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, and they owned the Los Angeles Times. Well, their leader, when I was working there, was Otis Chandler. And Otis was a weightlifter. He was training for a powerlifting competition, a master's. And he pulled a hamstring. And he asked me, do you think you could persuade Franco Columbu to come down and look at my hamstring? And so I said, well, let me ask him. So I called Franco, he said, sure. So we went down, we went into Otis's office, and it was, you have to remember at the newspaper, if you go to the newsroom, it's really noisy in those days. I mean, the teletypes are clanking and the phones are ringing off the hook and everybody's shouting across the newsroom. But as you go up in the executive suite, what do they call it, rarefied air or something like that? Anyway, it's very quiet. You could hear a pin drop. And Franco and Otis are in Otis's office with these giant wooden doors. It's very quiet, about a half dozen secretarial administrative people and me standing there. And we hear through the doors, Franco, no! Ah! Oh, Franco, no! Stop! Stop, you're killing me! And just then, my boss, Willard Colston, came up and he said, Rick, is Franco gonna get us fired? And I said, I don't know. And I said, Willard, no. Franco's really smart, trust me. And about 5 minutes later, the two of them walk out arm in arm, they're laughing, and Otis said, look, I'm sorry I was so noisy, but Frank was really pressing on my hamstring, and but actually it's starting to loosen up a little bit. I feel so much better. And he gave me an ab routine. Here he is, you know, this super powerful man like a teenager, and he gave me an ab routine and a diet. And so about a month later, I saw Otis at the Times, and he came literally across the room to me and said, Rick, tell Franco I've lost 2 inches off my waist. So that was Franco. Just so much charisma. I love this man. And it was because of him and the way he motivated me and encouraged me to bring out what I wanted. And he literally changed my life. And so I'm just so grateful to knowing he's in heaven and to be able to say, thank you, Franco. Thank you.